Well, what's up, everyone? This is podcast 30. Can you guys believe that this is our 30th one of these? That is insane, right? We started like what last year around March, April, something like that. Now this is going on 30. So 30 weeks, man. It has been a long time. It doesn't really feel like it though.
Right.
But I mean, I really love these times where we're able to just talk about different topics and stuff like that. What do you guys think about these podcasts? How have you guys been enjoying them?
Man, I can't believe that we have that much to say. And as of right now, the plan is to do more of them. So we got to think of even more things to say. So I'm shocked that I've had this much to say.
Yeah, it's been a wild time, but I think these are going really well. I really enjoy talking to you guys, and I've learned a lot just from listening, even when I'm not on, just listening to you guys. Um, you know, share your knowledge and what you guys have learned yourself. So I'm excited. Keep
Cool.
doing it.
Wow.
Awesome. So this week we're going to be talking about something, and that is friendships. Friendships, people. We're talking about the friends in our lives. And man, I'm really excited to jump into it. You guys ready? All right,
I'm ready.
let's do it. So, kind of the verse we're going to be using as a lens to kind of look at these things is John 15:13, which says, "There is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends." So great verse on friendship, and we just have some questions prepared. But if you guys have any questions, we would love to hear them as usual. Jump in the chat and just tell us what you guys are thinking. So talking about friendship. So first question is, what's the purpose of friendship, right? What's the point? What does God have to say about friends? What is it?
Yeah, I think that from my study of this, I couldn't find necessarily a direct Bible passage as we've had multiple times in this where it says the purpose of friendship is right. So you have to kind of tease things out, put it together, and but one of the ones that I think is kind of self-evident, but I think is real, is companionship. I thought about in Genesis, God said, about Adam, it's not good for the man to be alone. And so obviously that's where Eve came in. But I think beyond that, we can see the principle because your spouse, they are not going to be the only friend. They're not meant to be the only friend you have in your life because that would be very taxing, very draining. They are meant to be your best friend, but it's good to have other people in your life. And I also think about how, my wife, she needs girlfriends because I'm a guy. I can't relate to her as fully like another girl can on certain issues. And the same goes for guys. So companionship was definitely something that came to my mind. Also, I think building the kingdom. We see this with, I think, Jesus and the disciples, right? The disciples were friends with Jesus, and the disciples were friends among each other. They were very different people, but through that, their connection with Jesus and their 3.5 years together, they built a friendship with each other, but they had a common purpose, which was building the kingdom. And then the last thing that really comes to my mind on this is just to build you up. Friends are, I think the purpose biblically is they're meant to be an encouragement in your life, to build you up, help you be a better person, a better follower of Christ. And that's the other big role that I see.
That's great. Quick question. Is the chat working for you guys on YouTube? Mine just has a monkey with a hammer. It says something went wrong. So I didn't know if you saw something different, but I guess you guys don't know.
Mine doesn't have that. Mine looks normal. So
Okay, great. Cool. Maybe mine's just not loading. Anyways, purposes of friendship, for me, it's something that has such a great impact in our life. Has to have some kind of purpose, right? I mean, if something that has a huge impact in our life isn't purposed, then it's left to be dangerous. So I think that the Lord does have purposes for our friendships, right? Friendships are an overflow of influences in our life, of decisions we make, things we do, right? So I think the overall purpose of friendship should be really the community that we all desire, but a community centered around love, support, encouragement, furthering the goals and desires that we have as believers. And our goals and desires as believers should be to honor the Lord, to glorify God with our lives, and to do the things that God has commanded us and called us to do. So I think it is important that when we consider what is the purpose of my friendships, that we look at them and ask ourselves, are they helping us accomplish the desires of God in our life, and helping us accomplish the commitment, right, that we have made to honor the Lord with our life. And I think ultimately that's the purpose. And I love how you said, Tony, the Lord knows that we need help, right? And that's what our relationship should be. Our friendship should be places of help for us, places of accountability, places of growth. So yeah.
Yeah, you guys said some amazing things. Pastor Tony, you talked about your wife, needs friends outside of you,
Right.
and I can definitely relate to that, because I'm more quiet, right? I don't use as many words as my wife, and she has a high word quotient, right? So a lot of times, she is able to get, those words out when she talks to her female friends. And you as well, Pastor Lee, you have some great stuff to say with, what is the purpose of friends, and how do we, use that to benefit us, people that hold us accountable, people that are in our lives to help us grow and move forward. And the only thing I would add is, in Proverbs, it talks about, well, I don't know if it's a Proverbs, but it talks about how as iron sharpens iron, so as one man sharpens another. And that's what I look at as the purpose of friendship is sharpening each other, right? We're trying to do our best to grow and to be the best people of God, right? That we can be. And then another thing I'll just add too is, friendship, there's different levels of friendship. There's going to be people that are just acquaintances that maybe you just see all the time, right? And then there's going to be people who are kind of good friends, you talk to them once in a while. And then there's going to be those people that are your close friends, right? The people you confide in, the people that, you go to with issues that are really there in your life, right? Maybe the people that you would want standing with you on your wedding day, right? So these people are going to be a big deal, right? The people you choose to be your friends are going to be a big deal. So let's just talk about like why our friendship choices are so important.
Yeah. You know, go ahead,
Go
Pastor Tom.
for it.
I'll go for it. uh, on some level, I think, why are friendships such a big deal? Um, it's on some level, it's pretty obvious, right? I mean, we are who we hang out with, right? So, everyone is influenced by everyone else, right? I mean, you look at musical artists, any genre of TV entertainment, every newness that comes out is influenced by what people have done before. And we as human beings are no different in our friendships. Like, we're influenced by our friends. And if you pick bad friends, you get bad influences. You start doing things that, you that don't honor the Lord, that aren't in line with what God has commanded you to do. But if you pick strong, encouraging friends that are supportive and awesome and loving, then you become to be shaped and driven by those things as well, by encouragement, by love. So and from like a spiritual perspective and a discipleship perspective, we have a mission on earth, right? And our friends should essentially be who we're partnering with to accomplish that mission. So, it's important that we surround ourselves with people that want to accomplish that mission with us, and we want to be making disciples where the Lord is calling us to do. So, for the friends that, it's not about necessarily saving them or like sharing the gospel. Even in those instances, we're still displaying the character of God to those friends. I have a ton of friends that aren't believers, and I don't feel the burden or apply the pressure to like save them necessarily. But I remain available for the Lord to do something. And also, I still take on the universal call to display the character of God to those around me, and that applies to my unbelieving friends as well.
So,
Yeah, that's really good. I think I'll just echo what Pastor Leah was saying with two scripture verses on this topic, because it goes in line exactly with what he was saying. Proverbs 13:20 says, "One who walks with wise people will be wise, but a companion of fools will suffer harm." And then 1 Corinthians 15:33, "Do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character." And so we see here exactly what Pastor Lee was talking about, right? The people that you hang around, the people that you're friends with, they directly impact your life. If they are a negative influence, then guess what? It doesn't matter if you have good character, good morals, you're trying to follow Jesus. If the people you're associating with have negative morals, right, they're going to pull you down. And the same thing goes. And so it's important that we surround ourselves with good friends, good people that are going in the same direction that we're wanting to go, because ultimately we're going to be traveling. Where they're going is going to impact our ability to reach our destination.
Right.
yeah, that's so good. I think, when I think of the choices in friendship, one thing that I like to think about is Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, right? These three friends, if they didn't have each other, right? They were all men of God. When those moments came in their lives, would they have knelt down instead of still standing, right? When the horn was blown and everyone was kneeling down to the idol, right? Would they have still stood, right? But I like to think, like, in that moment, right? When you have those friends, right? When you just kind of look at them and you're like, man, I'm so glad you're here with me right now and I'm not by myself, right? And I think, that is so huge with your friendship choices, because in those moments they can make a moment of adversity that much easier, or a moment of joy that much joyful, right? Because you have the right people around you. Or sometimes you succeed and someone's like, oh, okay, that's cool,
Right.
right? But those good friends, right, those godly friends, they're gonna celebrate you and really make you feel special, right? So it's not just in those hard times, but also in the good times, right? And Pastor Leo, you touched on something also of non-believers. How do we do that, right? When maybe we've known someone for a super long time, and they just are not a non-believer. Like, how do we do that? How do we still honor God with our friendships, but still be a friend to people who are non-believers?
It's interesting. Yeah, I don't think you necessarily have to see your unbelieving friends as a mission field, right? Because I'm sure if you guys are listening and you have unbelieving friends, you know that your friends would probably feel a little belittled by that, because your unbelieving friends don't think they needed to be saved from anything, right? And I think it's important that we on some level respect that position that they're at, and not see them as a mission field, right? I mean, I have so many friends that aren't believers, but I'm seriously blessed and encouraged by their friendship. Um, like, faith in Jesus aside, they're just really good friends. So I'm more interested, honestly, in what I have to gain from some of my unbelieving friends and that friendship, than what I think like they need to gain, right? And that's because even though they don't believe in God, they still have a tendency to display the character of God. They're encouragers, they're loving, they're patient, they're kind, they're supportive. They even though they don't believe in what I believe, or like think what I do is necessary, they are proud of me and encourage me in what I do. Um, so even in those relationships where my friends are unbelievers, um, I'm still blessed by their friendship, because they're, whether they know it or not, they're displaying the character of God in my life. But I do think even in those friendships, it's important that we remain available to God, like I said earlier, to be used however he might lead us. You know, a friendship that you never bring up like the gospel necessarily because you've done it before or you've heard their perspective on it and you know they're not going to like listen to anything you have to say. God might open up a door on a day after an event that you never expected, and if we remain available, then God can do something there. And that just involves being in tune and in step with the Spirit. And you know, as a disciple, not negotiating the holiness and discipline that God has called you to. You know, essentially, don't let any friendship, you know, negatively affect your faith and your relationship with the Lord, but still display the character of God in those friendships.
Yeah, that's really good. I think for our younger viewers, one thing when it comes to being friends with a non-believer is your faith has to be solid, right? Because if they can influence you in a way where they can make you fall away, then it's probably not going to be unwise, right? I think, Pastor Leo, obviously you're in a place where you're solid. You can be friends with non-believers, and hopefully one day God is, or Holy Spirit is able to use you to lead them to the Lord, right? But you guys, as teenagers, I think sometimes we can tell ourselves that, and we're like, yeah, I'm going to win them to the Lord, right? But really, they're the ones that are influencing us, right? We're doing these bad things. We're, not doing what we should be doing. And instead, we're getting pulled down instead of being the ones to kind of hold them up. So that is one thing I would say is make sure your faith is solid, right? Because if they start asking you questions and all of a sudden you're doubting and you're like, yeah, why am I a Christian, right? That's not a good friendship to have. But I know in my experience, one of my closest friends was he was a believer and he ended up, falling away. And I still talk to him, of course. And like you said, Pastor Leo, one of the things is I'm not always talking to him about, God and all that. I just try to, love him as best as I can, right? That's what we're commanded to do is to love non-believers. And one thing that I did have to do is, he was one of my closest friends. He's not really in my, inner circle right now, because I can't really come to him and be like, man, I'm dealing with this, because he's not going to give me biblical advice, right? He's not going to point me to God. He's not going to point me to the word. He's going to give me worldly advice, and so, I talked about the levels of friendship, and I think that close level of friendship, you have to be of the same mind of that because, you want those friends to point you back to God. You want those friends to encourage you in the Lord, not just, giving you worldly, do better advice. And so it's a slippery slope, because obviously we want to be, a light in the world. We have to be in the world, right? We have to associate with non-believers, but, that's what I would say is, those good friends and those acquaintances, that's probably where you want to keep the non-believers at, because it just makes it a little harder when um, if you're really close friends, and something happens and then your morals and beliefs come up, it might be a point of tension at that point.
That's so good, Pastor Daniel. And I was thinking the exact same thing about how solid your faith is. That's a huge factor in having unbelievers as friends. The second big factor, which I also see so beautifully displayed in Pastor Leo, is that he counterbalances these unsaved friends with saved friends. Pastor Leo is surrounded by a ton of godly influences, godly friends who he can go to, like you were just saying, to get that biblical perspective, that godly advice. Because I would think and Pastor Leo, again, is solid in his faith, but for other people out there, if all you have, the problem is you have people who aren't solid in their faith, and all they have is unbelieving friends. So that's just that's a double whammy for a negative situation, right? So I think having both of those in place is really a key to being able to have friends with unbelievers. And I want to also comment, Pastor Leo had talked about basically not making your unsafe friends a project. And I couldn't agree more. I think absolutely people will get that vibe. You're going in it with, they'll, even though your heart is good, the perception that they will have is not going to be good of what you're trying to accomplish. And so, for people like myself, I grew up going to a private school. And then in college, I was pretty much get in and get out. I didn't really socialize or participate in clubs. And so obviously I was serving in church and I work in a church environment. So all that to say, I have had very few unbelieving friends throughout my life. When I was a kid in my neighborhood, that was pretty much the only time where I had close friends who were unbelievers. And so my heart, if I were to, the Lord were to bring some people into my life who aren't believing, mission would be my focus, because I want nothing more than for them to be saved and to be going to heaven. And so, but doing that in the right way, approaching it in the right way, and having the proper space to be friends and not always trying to bring up God or, I think is good points of advice. So.
You're muted, Pastor Leah.
You made a good point, Pastor Daniel, that had me thinking about, like, I really started analyzing after you said, like, who you go for advice. I started looking at my friendships and I'm like my unbelieving friends, they're my homies, like we're tight, but I started considering when I really have something that I'm going through and like I need advice on and direction on and guidance on, I go to my believing people. Like I go to Pastor Daniel, I go to Pastor Tony, I go to Pastor Mark, I go to PS, right? I go to my brother, I go to my parents who are believers, and I ask for their input and their advice. And that's important as a believer, that like when we're going through things, we cling to biblical truth as our guidance, as our standard, and we go to people who are going to lead us in that. Which is honestly, that never crossed my mind. I never took note of that, but that's a really important factor when it comes to how do we manage our friendships with unbelievers, and what does that look like for us as believers. It's a really good point.
Yeah, and that just goes back to what we talked about before about our friendship choices, right? Choosing those people, right? Because in those moments, the people you chose are going to be, the people that are around you, right? So if you have a good, group of people around you, you're going to be a lot better off if you have a kind of a, wishy-washy, group of people, but, talking about choices, staying on friendship, I think one question, right, that is a pretty big one, especially when you're in high school, is what about opposite sex friendships, right? Is it possible to be platonic friends with the opposite sex, right? Platonic just means strictly, nothing, there's no attraction. It's just strictly friends. What do you guys think about that? Is that possible?
You want to go, Pastor Leo?
Nah, you got it, bro.
You want me to go? All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I may be in the minority here, but I will say that, and we're going to create a distinction, which I think is important for this discussion. I would say that yes, I do think it is possible to be platonic friends with someone of the opposite sex. And I will say this, here's the two caveats. Okay. First of all, it is very likely if you are, and we're talking about, closer friends, you guys hang out, you guys text, whatever. It's likely at least one of you is going to develop feelings. And those feelings may not be reciprocated. That's where the infamous friend zone comes in, right? But one of you may develop feelings. So that's caveat number one. Second caveat is, I think this is a uniquely high school, maybe college thing. Because once you get in a committed relationship, you're seriously dating someone, you can't have somebody else in your life of the opposite sex that you are really close with. Because let me tell you, in marriage, that's a no-go. That is where affairs come in. That's where there's jealousy, there's strife. it's a recipe for bad things. So that's my two caveats. But yes, I do think it's possible that you could be friends with someone of the opposite sex, middle school, high school. You guys talk, you hang out, more so with a group of friends type thing. And you guys, confide in one another. But those are the two caveats. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, obviously there's a lot of risk in being friends with somebody of the opposite sex. Like Pastor Tony said, I'm of the belief that like at some point, if you guys are close friends, like somebody's gonna develop feelings, and if both people develop feelings, I mean, it's like, were you even friends? Because now you guys just like each other. But and if you're two single people, I guess I can be okay. It's like it's not a problem. But Pastor Tony makes a huge distinction, right? It's like in my thought process is like if I can't have a close female friend when I'm married, then I, I don't see the benefit of having a close female friend while I'm single, unless I'm looking for my wife. And in that case, I'm not looking for a friend, so it's not really about friendship. But you know, I think in this scenario, it's just important that you're protecting yourself, right? Like, because things result from it, that, and it's easy, the sin is present in those kind of situations, and temptation is real in those kind of situations. And I also think that the terms of friendship might change. I don't, I think a friendship with a girl looks a little different for a guy, or a guy with a girl, than it might look with like one of your dudes, or one of your best girlfriends. So those are my thoughts on it. Obviously there's some risk and some temptation involved, but yeah, and the terms change along our life path. So
Yeah, it's a tough question. It's um, one of the things I try to do, with whenever we're doing these podcasts, is put myself in your position, right? Because these questions are, for you guys, right? You guys are teenagers, you guys are in high school, middle school, and so I try to go back to when I was in high school, and I got to tell you guys, when I was in high school, I had a lot of female friends, and so but looking back on it and seeing why, it was for a bunch of different reasons. So one of the reasons was, small talk for me is draining. It's hard for me, right? And I found that most of my male friends would only talk about sports and, all these surface level things. And my female friends, I could talk more about, how I was feeling and all that, right? But this is all before I was a believer. And so I kind of, I wanted that deeper conversation, and I wasn't finding it in my male friends. And so, as I got older and I became a believer and all that kind of stuff, I was able to find, male friends that I could joke around with, and I could also get deep with, right? I could also talk about the word and all that. And so that, I think, is obviously the best policy. I think, having friends of the same sex is the safest. But I also do see, I will say, that I did have, healthy friendships with girls while I was single. And there was a benefit to it because, women have a different perspective. And once I started dating my now wife, I was able to, relate to her more. And I have four sisters, right? So being around women was never like this weird thing for me because they were always there, And so the one thing I will say though is once I did start dating Aaron, is I had to look at my female friendships and be like, all right, these things need to kind of change, right? Because now I'm in a committed relationship. And, you can kind of set yourself up for failure if you have all female or all male friends, right? Then you get into a relationship and all of a sudden you're like, oh wait, you don't like I'm friends with like six other girls? Like, what is this an issue, right? And so that's one of the things we faced at the beginning of our relationship. Is I remember we're on FaceTime, and this girl called me, and I was like, oh, so and so is calling me, and I thought nothing of it, right? I'm like, oh yeah, we're just friends, right? And we were. I didn't, whatever, but I just saw the look on her face when I told her that, and I was like, okay, this isn't okay. That she's, calling me and she wanted to, talk about something that was going on with her family. And I was like, all right, I need to look at my friendships and I need to, obviously put Erin first and her feelings first. And I had to step back from those other friendships. And that's how we are now is, any woman that's in my life that is, a friend or acquaintance or friendly, Aaron knows them, right? It's not like I'm having a separate friend outside of our marriage that only I talk to, right? Like that is completely no. There's no way that would ever happen. And so, I think that's another thing is, what is your motive, right? Like why do you want this friend? Sometimes it's and I'm talking a little long here, but sometimes it's people you grew up with, right? Like you just have a family friend that you literally grew up with, your parents know each other and you're around them. And so I go back to that close friend, kind of level of friendship where they're not going to be in your close friends, right? You're not going to be going to them with issues like, oh yeah, this is happening in my marriage, let me talk to this opposite sex friend right now. And that's not going to be good, right? But they may still be in that second level or acquaintance level. um, but like you said, Pastor Leo, there's risk in it, and everyone has to kind of know themselves, right? Where if maybe you have had issues with lust or something like that, you probably shouldn't have opposite sex friends like at all, right? You shouldn't really even be around them, right? But if it's kind of something where you've kind of just grown around it your whole life, and you have family friends and stuff like that, obviously not being in the close friendship level, but it's a whole web you kind of have to figure out, right, with your spouse, setting boundaries, and making sure that you're open with everything, right? Like my wife can look through my phone whenever, like, and it's not like I'm out here just texting girls, right? That I don't do that. But my wife looks through my phone whenever she wants to, and there's nothing hidden between us. So yeah, and it can turn toxic, right? It can turn unhealthy, right? So what do you guys think are, like, how do you know when a friendship in general, or opposite sex friendship or whatever, is turning toxic or unhealthy? Like what are signs of that?
Yeah, there's a few signs that I can think of. Maybe a friendship is leading you into sinful patterns. Maybe you're really dependent on a friendship in some way, like you feel like you need it, right? Or you feel like if you don't have it, you'll be lost or unfulfilled or unhappy. Maybe you feel like without a relationship, you won't go anywhere in life or something like that. Or we also all have insecurities, and sometimes our friends can fuel those insecurities. They can fuel the fears in our life. They can say things that just make our insecurity more real, or even the things that our friends say to us are the very thing that creates an insecurity in us, and that's not healthy. So it's kind of like being really honest with yourself and your heart, and checking yourself, and analyzing your friendship, and looking at the friendships in your life, and saying, is this a place of support, encouragement? Are me and my friends partnering together to help one another accomplish the goals and desires that we've set before ourselves, right? Surrounded by love. And hopefully, those things are also what God desires for you, right? That ought to be the standard for relationships, that I invest my heart into, right? Ones that are encouraging and supporting, where growth is happening, where accountability is happening, where we're both in tune with what the Holy Spirit wants for each other, and we're furthering that. Because the only other thing it can be, if it's not positive, encouraging, supportive, growth, accountability, it can only be neutral, where like it's not bad but it's not good, or it can be negative, right? And yes, I'm sure sometimes we'll have neutral relationships where like two people just really click and get along, and y'all just hang out, right? And that's cool, but the only other thing is negative, where insecurities are being created, where it's altering your heart and your spirit in negative ways. And yeah, I think those are pretty clear signs of a toxic relationship.
That's really good stuff, Pastor Leo. I like what you were saying, and it reminded me. The last point you were saying actually reminded me of a sermon I believe Pastor John did on the topic of friendship, probably several years ago at this point. And I think he was talking about how fun, is a purpose that a lot of people associate with friendship. But he really raised the question: is that really a biblical purpose, right? And when we started off talking about God's purpose for friendship, there's higher things than just having fun. Like, yes, fun is a great byproduct, but really it's about making a difference in the kingdom. It's about growth, and becoming a better person, and that type of things you were just sharing. So some additional things that came to my mind, that are signs of a toxic relationship: if they're tearing you down and never building you up, if they are takers, constantly taking from you in the relationship rather than giving to you. You already mentioned sin issues, just some examples: anger, porn, cussing, complaining, cheating. These are things that are a little bit contagious. In fact, let me go to that scripture. Yeah, in Proverbs 22, 24 through 25, it says, "Do not make friends with a person given to anger, or go with a hot-tempered person, or you will learn his ways and find a snare for yourself." So certain things are contagious. If they hold grudges against you, right? They can never let things go, constantly bringing that up. And if they have unrealistic expectations of you, constantly demanding, that kind of goes with being a taker rather than a giver. And a kind of a simple one, this kind of last thing would be if they drain you. If you walk away from spending time with that friend and you just feel taxed, right? That is not a good thing. That is a sign that there's a difference between introverts and extroverts. But even for us introverts who prefer to be by ourselves, when you are with your friends, you should leave encouraged, refreshed, built up, not drained and just taxed, like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad to get away from that person. So
Yep.
Yeah, it's really good. Camille, you had great answers in the chat over here. If your friends are calling you names, that's probably not a good sign, right? That's probably a sign of a toxic relationship. Pastor Tony, you said something amazing, right? If they drain you, right? I think everyone has been there, right? When you get that phone call or a text, and immediately you're like, "Oh my goodness, I don't want to deal with this," right? That is a good sign that it is not a healthy relationship, or maybe even toxic, right? Do you guys refresh each other, right? Another one is, do you hold each other accountable, right? Like, if someone is over here telling you, "Oh yeah, I just did this, and that," like these terrible things, right? And they're like, "Oh yeah, man, that's cool." It's like, okay, you're not gonna call me out. You're not gonna do nothing, right? Pastor Antonio is one of my favorite verses is in Proverbs that friends from wounds from a friend can be trusted, but the enemy multiplies kisses, right? To me, if you're struggling with something and your friend knows and they don't tell anyone, that's not a good friend. That's the unhealthy friendship, right? Because you're not really, going back to the verse we talked about, laying down your life for your friend. You're laying down your friendship with that friend, right? Maybe they're going to be mad at you if you tell their parents or something like that, but ultimately you're valuing the person above everything else, right? You're like, man, I want this person to be healthy. They're dealing with so and so issue, but I'm not just going to hold this secret, right? Because that puts you in a compromising position where they want you to hold secrets for them, right? Where it could be, something that is hurting them. And then another thing I'll say is, this is something that me and my wife talk about, is how do they disagree with you, right? When you guys have differing opinions or differing whatever's, like, how do they treat you, right? Is it just in that moment you guys talk and you guys can, disagree and it'd be fine? Or is it like this huge thing where they just tear you apart and question your intelligence and all these kinds of things, right? And so toxic and unhealthy friendships can be hard, right? And a lot of times it'll lead us to ending those relationships. So how do we do that? How do we end a friendship, not even just a toxic one, but maybe one that you're just kind of just fizzling out or whatever? Like, How do you end a friendship the
Mm.
right way?
Yeah, I'd love to jump in on this one because I have, unfortunately, the two principles I'm about to share with you guys. I've learned the hard way. I learned by not doing these things, and I definitely there's regret in my life, because of that. And so the first big principle is I would say do it directly. In other words, don't do it passively. I've told this story from the pulpit before, but when I was much younger, I had friends and they weren't believers, like I said. And I remember coming back from a youth camp, and the speaker had said, if you have unsaved friends that are negative influences in your life, you need to get rid of them, right? And so I went and did that, but the way that I did it was I didn't have a conversation with them and tell them, hey guys, this is what's going on. These are my concerns. You guys have been my childhood friends for years. I don't want it to go this way. No, when they would come to my door to say, hey, can you come play? I would like not answer the door, or I'd have my mom say like, no, I can't come out, And so eventually they just stopped coming, right? And so that effectively ended the friendship because they're like, well, he never comes out. He never talks to us. He never plays with us. And that's a big regret in my life, because I see that I missed not only an opportunity to testify and to share what God was doing in my life, um, but and I think of the story of Jacob. This spoke to me immensely. We read this not too long ago in the 1 Year Bible, but God told Jacob to leave Laban to go back to his family, Isaac and them. So God told Jacob to do that, but the way Jacob did it was wrong. And it ended up in backlash where Laban chased him. He was passive. Jacob just ran away. And so Laban pursued him and said, what's going on, man? You didn't even let me kiss my grandchildren goodbye. What's going on? And so that to me is a perfect example of what I did in my life, right? I needed to separate myself from those friends, right? Maybe that was what God was calling me to do, but the way I did it was not right. So first of all, do it directly. Second of all, don't make it unnecessarily public. And so what I mean by that is, of course, we have social media, and then there's gossiping to other people, right? So there's no need, because guys know how this is. Like, yes, there's a place for seeking godly counsel. Hey, I have this friend, I think it's toxic. You come to your parents, you come to your pastors, you come to small group leaders, right? Or maybe another good friend. That's legit, get some counsel. But you don't need to be constantly talking about, oh my gosh, this person and they did this and they did that. And, I had to cut them off my life because they were so toxic, and you keep talking about it after the fact, right? So there's a place for godly counsel, but don't talk about it unnecessarily. So those would be my two biggest lessons that I've learned the hard way.
Yeah, so based on what Tony said, here's what you don't do. You don't just stop responding to him and blame it on like the pandemic, like, oh, I can't hang out anymore, you know what I mean? I'm trying to be safe and wear a mask everywhere I go. And then don't put it on social media like, hey, tag them, me and this guy are not friends anymore. That's good advice, Pastor Tony. My advice would be first, really check your heart and make sure you're ending a friendship for the right reasons. I know for me, I can be like irritable, and sometimes my irritability like causes me to be critical of maybe friends or people when it's not right to do so, right? Like when God's not done yet in that relationship or something. So I always really have to check my heart and find, am I ending relationship for the right reasons? And then if you can come to a place of like, yes, and you feel like the Lord is like, and obviously we've talked about things that are toxic and great reasons in friendships, right? And if those are the reasons, then, I think moving forward and ending a relationship is just the importance of being honest, like in love. And I love what you said, Pastor Tony. You said you missed an opportunity to, well, not testify. What word did you use?
Testify.
Right. Testify your faith and your priorities, right, to them. And on some level, when you end a friendship, that could be what you're doing. Of course, it needs to be done in love and an honesty of saying like, just being honest about how a friendship is affecting you and the things that matter most to you. And I think when severing a relationship, I think if you can make it about you the most you can, like I think on some level there might be a call to hold others accountable, but like basically just saying like, here's how our friendship is affecting me negatively. Like I don't feel encouraged. I don't feel supportive. My confidence is shrinking. My security is shrinking, based on the conversations we've had, and just being honest and upfront. And then also maybe saying how it's affecting your faith. Like, and this is an opportunity. It's really cool, actually, an opportunity to declare to people close to you how important your faith is. Like, man, I have a commitment and a priority to honor the Lord, and on some level, our relationship is getting in the way of that. And um, also know this, that like if you're ending a relationship that the Lord has called you to, or a relationship that's toxic or hurting your faith, know that it's pleasing to the Lord to do that. Like it's pleasing to the Lord for you to sever your friendships and your relationships in order to honor him. And Jesus even said that in the New Testament. He's like, my brothers and sisters are those that follow me, believe in me, and honor me. Those are my brothers and my sisters and my family. And Jesus was just putting emphasis on like, our relationship with the Lord is so much more important than any relationship we have on earth, no matter who it is. And if we're putting God ahead of that for right reason, then that's pleasing to the Lord, and we can do it with confidence.
And both of you guys said really good things. I think, going back to looking at it through the lens of the teenagers, I think, uh, in high school, I don't know about you guys, Pastor Leo, Pastor Tony. I don't talk to one person from my high school. Not
Right.
one do I talk to. And I think a lot of times we think these friendships are always meant to last forever. And I think it's just not true. I think, sometimes it's not even for a toxic reason or anything like that, but friendships just end, right? Maybe it's proximity where you move away or you go to different colleges or whatever, or someone is just immersed in their lives and they don't have as much time, and I think that's okay. That's one of the things I've learned, in my life is, there are friends that are just there for a season, and they help you through that season. Maybe you were having a really rough time and they were there for you, and then your lives kind of take you in different directions, and you're just not able to be the same close friends that you were before. And I have plenty of people in my life that are like that. And obviously, I still love them. They're still, I still consider them a close friend. But, you know, practically, I'm not, daily living my life with them anymore. I'm not, talking to them every week, right? Maybe it's more now every 3 months or once a year or something like that, right? And so I think, when we talk about ending a friendship, that that goes into it. It's not always like this bad thing. It could just be that's the time for the friendship. They were there for you in that season, and they helped you through. And now your lives are kind of different levels. And then I also say the other way. Um, I've learned from experience as well of just trying to ghost someone. Because I would say most people whenever they're like, oh, I don't really want to be friends with this person, they just kind of let it die, right? Slowly texts go unanswered, FaceTime calls go unanswered, and they're like, all right, this person doesn't want to be friends with me, right? So I tried to do that once and I assumed it would work out, and it did not. Right, this person kept FaceTiming me, this person kept texting me and stuff, and I was like, man, they're not getting the hint, right? So eventually I had to talk to him and just be like, hey, you know, I just feel like we don't challenge each other. I feel like we're not sharpening each other. And, because of that, I don't want to, take up your time. And I honestly don't have the time in my life to be doing that for you either. And I had to, kind of end the friendship like that. So it's tough, it's tough, but friendships, yeah, they can be seasonal. They can be just that time to end. If they're toxic, you gotta cut them off, right? You gotta do it the right way. So as we close out, give you guys some time to think about your final thoughts. I'm already ready, but just give us your minute, final thought. I'll go first. For me, my final thought on friendship would be, be the friend that you want to have, right? Be the person that is holding your friends accountable, that won't just let them do whatever. Like, you're going to challenge them and push them. You're going to check in with them. You're going to ask them how they are, and you're going to follow up on what they talk to you about. It's not just, hey, I'm praying for you, but like, no, let's pray right now. Like, all those things that you have told someone else, like, oh man, I wish, a friend did this. I wish, this, or that you've thought, like, man, be that person, right, for someone else. And, God will be faithful to bring those friends, those good, godly friends in your life as well. So, yeah, those are my final thoughts.
Yeah, my piece of advice would be don't let your friendships fuel your obedience to Christ, but let your obedience to Christ fuel your friendship. So let there be a greater loyalty to being like Christ than there is to keeping a friendship or to acting a certain way in a friendship. And so be the encourager. If nobody in your friendship is if you're not surrounded by encouragers, be the encourager. If you're not surrounded by people who are supportive and on your team, be that for the people around you, and cling to Jesus the whole way through. Cling to the Holy Spirit. By the power of the Holy Spirit, you can do that. Yeah, and don't let your friendships be your only community, especially non-believing friends. Make sure you're surrounded by mentors, right? Older people who love the Lord, who love you, and can offer you great advice and lead you through your life. That would be my advice.
That's so good. Yeah, as I think back to myself, and in case there's anyone listening now or in the future who was like me, particularly when I was in middle school, friendships were lacking in my life. I did not have friendships. That was something I desired. I went to a smaller school, and I just started going to the youth ministry, the beginning of middle school. And I remember that just being a desire in my heart. And so I want to say two things with that. First of all, the Lord is your friend who will never leave you, never forsake you. He's always there. And that's one of the things that I did. I really turned to the Lord in that season. But like I said at the beginning, companionship is a function of friendship as well. And so I prayed to the Lord and I asked him to send me friends, and he did. I did have friends who came into my life in latter middle school and high school. And yes, like Pastor Daniel said, friendships can be seasonal, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I just want to encourage you guys to seek the Lord, both for his friendship, and then also I believe that he'll bring those friends into your life as you do the things we've talked about tonight. I love what Pastor Daniel said about being that friend that you want to see. So those are my thoughts.
Awesome. Well, we love you guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. And we'll be back next week, the week after that, because we're going to be in person, right? Pastor Tony's going to be preaching. So we can't wait to see you guys. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time.